We're in Luke chapter 14 tonight. We got just a little bit right at the end of John chapter 10, but about that much. Literally John 10. So you go to Luke 14 if you want to. But I got just one review slide tonight, but I only put it in because we're going to reference it later on in the class tonight, because Jesus again heals on the Sabbath in the lesson tonight. So touch on this one. So in the last class, we talked about this woman that had been bent over for all these years with that. And again, it was on the Sabbath day. And the ruler of the synagogue rebuked him for doing it. Not him directly. He rebuked the people for coming on the Sabbath day to be healed. So you got other days to come be healed then. And Jesus got back to him because you're a hypocrite, the way you're acting. You water your animals on the Sabbath. Keep it in mind, water your animals on the Sabbath. That's what he told him this time in Luke 13. And then she's not more important than animals, and you're throwing out your mercy and compassion and your love. So we talked about that all last class. So I just would bring that up because we'll get one very similar to it tonight as we go into this one. So Luke 16. Lesson 16, Luke 14, sorry. Right at the end of John chapter 10, Bob in this book kind of tries to bring what we're doing in Luke and what we did before in John and kind of start merging the two back together time-wise. If you remember right, when we left off John, we had gone through the Feast of Tabernacles and then what they call the Feast of Dedication. The Feast of Dedication was not a Jewish feast, a Law of Moses feast. It was a Jewish feast that came in during the period between the Testaments. That's kind of where we left off. That was wintertime was in John. We jumped over then all these stories in Luke. So now this little piece here comes start tying the timeline kind of back together as best we can tell, because a lot of these things in Luke they're just there. There's not a continuous narrative going on to figure out where it is. So at the end of John chapter 10, the Feast of Dedication is over. We speak about wintertime, probably less than 4 months before Jesus will die at the Passover. So we're getting down to that last part. He goes across the Jordan, and most of the commentators think he remained on the east side, probably in Perea. I don't have a picture of the Jordan. So this is nice, lush, and green. So all we can say he crossed the Jordan, and you can imagine the brown grass out there, I guess. So, but Perea, and you can't see it, but Galilee's up above Samaria, of course. But Herod Antipas ruled both of those. So, of course, he's the son of Herod the Great. He's the one that killed John the Baptist and will be involved in Jesus' trial later on. Herod will. And one note in verse 41 of John 10 there, it says that John didn't do any signs, but the people are beginning to see in Jesus everything John said about him as being true. They're recognizing that. And because of that, verse 42 says many believed on him. So right now, as best we can tell, he's probably time-wise, wintertime. I don't know exactly what month, but, getting 3 or 4 months before he's going to die. And probably across the Jordan in Perea at this time. So the outline for chapter 14 in Luke kind of goes like this. First 24 verses is he's invited to eat with a Pharisee. And then these are the events that go on at that dinner. He heals this man on the Sabbath, and we'll talk about that. And then he talks to these guests who are there and the seats they're choosing. And he turns and talks to the host then, and then tells this parable about the invitations going out and being rejected. And then the last part of the chapter, it really ties in with it. You think, well, that's a whole separate section. But when he winds up the invitation that people rejected, so they went out and brought everybody in, which we'll get to there at the end of the first part. Then he goes into this thing of cost of discipleship. What's it cost to be my disciple, if you want that? So he got the tower builder and the warring kings, and then salt that's useless. So that's kind of what we'll be looking at tonight. So let's start off with the chapter 14, verse 1. And he's in the house of one of these, the chief of the Pharisees, and it says they were watching him. And the word for watching here actually means, from what I read, interested in sinister espionage. All right, some of you brainies that use the word sinister every day, what does sinister mean? I went and looked it up. I didn't know. What does it mean? Related to evil. It's what kind of amounts to. It's, I'm watching you for evil intent, more or less. So they're watching him with an evil eye to see what he's going to do. They have their plan laid kind of as it goes. So the big question that comes in is it legal or lawful to heal on the Sabbath? That's what the whole thing is all about. So I want to read you some. I'm going to do quite a bit of reading tonight because this stuff is so good stuff. I just don't want to miss anything, so we go through it. This writer says, professing friendship and affection, he invited our Lord to his table, merely that he might have a more favorable opportunity of watching his conduct, that he might accuse him and take away his life. Now, the time that Jesus has already healed on the Sabbath. And think back, we've already been through all these, so think about them. He healed Peter's wife's mother, the man with a withered hand, that was Luke 4 and Luke 6. The woman had been crippled for 18 years, Luke 13. The paralytic at Pool of Bethsaida, that's John 5. The man was born blind, in John chapter 9. The demonic synagogue in Capernaum, is in Mark 1. And now this man here who has dropsy. And we'll talk about dropsy some more just in a minute. So the question then is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? Well, that, of course, begs a question. Is healing work? That's what it all boils down to. Okay. So Exodus 20. I think I referred to this in one of the text messages or something. Exodus 20 is the giving of the Ten Commandments. So verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, not your cattle, your stranger who is within your gates. 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that's in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. So, what's he got here? They're watching him to see if he'll heal. So think about who's here at this dinner. This chief Pharisee invited him there, and he's got a lot of his friends there, as we'll get to when Jesus starts talking to them here in a minute. And this man with dropsy's there. So you kind of wonder, well, what's he doing there with this at this dinner with these chief Pharisees? It all appears to be like a setup. Okay, they bring Jesus in, and let's see how he's going to handle this. So he asked them, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And what was their answer? They didn't answer. Okay, why? Well, here's the why. If they said, yes, it's lawful to heal on the Sabbath, well, they just violated. There are traditions that say you can't do it on the Sabbath. So they've got him back, all these I read a while ago. That's why they've complained about all those healings on the Sabbath day. Because it violates their traditions. Now, is it violating the law? If we read back over a while ago, well, of course not, because Jesus would not have violated the law. We know that. So if they say, no, it's not lawful, you can't do it, well, then they show no mercy or compassion. Remember, the other one we just talked about from last class, that was a big thing that Jesus was showing in it, was the mercy and compassion and love for that woman who had that disease for 18 years. So they can't answer it because they're kind of caught in a pickle. They know what it's going to do to them if he does it. So is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? So they don't answer it. So what does Jesus do? He heals the man, and notice he said he sends him away. He really probably wasn't in that group that should be at the party, at the feast, the dinner. He was there, I think, from everything other people I read, and I'm thinking he was there for a purpose. He was there to see what Jesus would do with him on the Sabbath day. So he heals this man of dropsy. Dropsy is a disease produced by the accumulation of water in various parts of the body. Very distressing and commonly incurable. Dropsy is an archaic term associated with edema, swelling, which is sometimes caused by kidney or heart diseases, may result from other ailments, may be evidence itself in buildup of fluids in the arms or legs, may also involve other parts of the body, including pulmonary edema, which is congestive heart failure as we know it. So you get the idea of what it is. It's this accumulation of fluid in the body, and to them, there was no cure for it. So Jesus heals this man with dropsy. At this time, he asked him, not would you loose your ox or donkey and take it and water it on the Sabbath. He goes further work-wise. Look what he says. If you're, and several versions say if your child or your son fell into a pit, your son or a donkey. Some others say if your donkey or your ox fell into a pit. On the Sabbath day, would you go get him out? It's a question he asked him. Well, what's the obvious answer? I mean, what's always said about a good attorney? A good attorney never asks a question he doesn't know the answer to, right? Of course, this is Jesus with him, I understand that, but he knows the answer to it. He knows what they're going to do. What do? They get him out. Oh no, maybe they don't, but they send their servant to get him out. What did we read a while ago in Exodus? Who should do no work on the Sabbath day? Not you, your son, your male servant, your female servant. Nobody's to work. Not even your cattle. So, would you take him from the pit on the Sabbath? Well, he knows they would. He knows they would. So, they don't answer for him. So all this thing they tried to do to trap him, it's kind of backfired. As not the first time that's happened. There's only one correct answer. The one Jesus chose, hated the man, and that's what he did. So that's kind of the event that kicks this whole thing off. Now from this, we're going to get 3 or 4 more things that fall in line after that. He's going to use a parable. In this case, what one of the writers said about it, the word parable is an elastic word. Here it means a piece of advice instilling humility. It's not the usual type of a parable where you got an analogy that you're looking at and this represents this and this and this. So a parable or a lesson he's going to teach them here. And it comes down then to pride and who chooses which seats when they go to a feast. It's kind of interesting too. A different commentator I was looking at said this parable, the Lord only repeats the advice which the rabbis had given to their pupils who were too proud to conform to themselves. And it goes on and quotes from a certain rabbi here who almost says exactly the same words Jesus says about when you go to a feast, go to the lower place to get moved up, or vice versa, like Jesus said. That's quoting from one of their rabbis. So they taught that, but they wouldn't do it. What word is that? That we've seen before, okay? So that comes into play again there. So when they go to this function, they want the best seat. They are invited to a function. So Jesus tells them, don't exalt yourself. And the word exalt here is that of arrogance or pride or self-exaltation. Your ego is getting in your way. So you go there and you're exalting yourself by putting yourself up at the head table. We think about a banquet we have here, it's the head table up here. So I'm going up there and sit at the head table. Don't do that. Rather sit at the low seat. Go to the back and sit somewhere. And why is he saying this? Well, number one, you're not showing your arrogance and your pride in doing that. But he goes and makes a point with it. If the one who invited you to the feast wants you at the head table, but you're sitting back somewhere else, and goes and gets you and moves you up to the front, and everybody sees you being moved up to the front, wow, nice, huh? But what if you're sitting at the front and you're not supposed to be up there? You're in Mr. So-and-so's place. So now they tap you on the shoulder and said, sorry, your place is back there somewhere. Well, now in front of all your associates and everybody else, you got put down, got humbled. So it ends with verse 11 when it says, Whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. We'll read these 4 passages right quick. You can turn to them or you just listen. They're very short, but they've all got a point about this humility. 1 Timothy 6, we'll back up to Romans 12 first. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Don't think you're smarter than what you really are. Don't promote yourself to the others. 1 Timothy 6, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty or trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God. James 4, but he gives more grace. Therefore, he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. In 1 Peter 5, verses 5 and 6, likewise, you younger people, submit yourself to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive one to another and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Same verse we had in James 4. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Go sit at the lowly seat. And if God needs you to move to the high seat, he'll put you there. Take this passage here and apply it to that one there. So, comments. These are a bunch of little sections again to kind of go here. So jump in if you got something to put into it here. So that's what he told the guests were there. So now it seems he kind of going to talk to the guy who invited them all there, talk to the host. They would apply to all the others too if they were hosting a party or a feast. So he tells them, when you have a party, when you have a feast, don't invite your friends. Now, he doesn't really mean don't invite your friends, as in you've got to take several things we have tonight and put them in kind of context. But why is he saying don't invite your friends? For the idea of them being able to do what? Invite you back to theirs. Okay, tit for tat type thing, you know. I invite you to my party, and you invite me to your party. We'll keep our little social thing going here. And don't invite your rich friends. Oh, I run this circle that's got all the doctors and lawyers and the whatevers. Why? Oh, so I can know the big dogs in town or whatever, or maybe I should say the politicians and whoever. So I'm looking for some gain, something to come out of it. So I invite them to my party so I can get what I can get out of it. Coffin in his commentary, listen to this. There's far too much of the same thing that Jesus condemned in the hospitality one sees today and in not a few churches. There are little cliques engaged almost exclusively in entertaining themselves, and that we're certain is wrong, quote, end quote, to him. Jesus, in Revelation 3, the church of Laodicea, he says, because you say, quote, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing. You don't know that you're reckoned miserable, poor, blind, and naked. So you're not seeing yourself as you really are. That's what he's saying. So, what does he don't do? If you don't invite these people, who are you going to invite? Well, you're going to invite those who will not be able to repay you with an invitation. That's going to come in very much so in the next parable he tells here. Why? What does Jesus say your reward is here? The reward is not getting invited to their party, to their feast, or being able to associate with the rich guys in town. Where's your reward come this time? The resurrection. Okay. Jesus gives rewards out for that. So, what condition were we in when Jesus invited us? Were we friends then? Probably not. Were we the rich people in town? Well, if we were, we would be more likely we're the wretched, poor, blind that Jesus talks about inviting to the feast. So think about how that might apply to us. Okay, so now he takes those two things. He's healed on the Sabbath. Now he's taking this group. He's talked to them about their haughtiness, and he's talked to them about the feast and who you invite and who you need to be invited to it. So now he's going to take all that and kind of tie it together with this parable he's going to tell. So it starts in verse 15. Let me find my next note over here, sorry. So God's prepared this feast. So when Jesus tells this parable, we got to figure out the players here. And there, if you read about it, I mean, to me, it's, I think, pretty clear. Maybe I'm wrong when I look at it. But there is some controversy. You read some of the commentators about who fits into which one of these parts here. As I see it, God's prepared the feast, and he sent Jesus to pass out the invitations, if you will. He's what come to call us to his feast. This feast God's prepared. And we'll see in a minute kind of why I believe that's what it is. If you have something different, I'd be glad to give you some time to talk about it. So what's the invitation? All things are ready. Come to the feast. So it's invitations go out to come to this big feast that God's prepared and his son's one is coming. Keep that in the back of your mind. Keep the spiritual side over here as you think about just a normal feast that we would relate to here. So all things are ready. Meals prepared. Everything's set. Come to the feast. And excuses began. I can't come because. I can't come because. I can't come because. So read this. They're determined with one consent, that is, they all have one mind, all these making excuses, not to attend. That is, each had the same disdain for the feast and for those giving it. Obviously, each had greater interest in her own personal affairs. That's what one commentator wrote about this. And if you put the spiritual side into it, with God prepared the feast, Christ came to the invitation, and he turned him down. It fits exactly what this person's saying here. Okay? Now, let's put ourselves in the place of these people he's talking to here. This group of the chief Pharisee and those who would be there at his feast, hearing Jesus say that. Let me read you this. When we keep in mind what the Jewish hopes concerning the setting up of the kingdom of God is, that it is a big ushered in by a glorious feast. That's what the Jews were looking for, this big celebration. It's easy to perceive how this man's mind passed on to a great festival. They were talking about the feast. In their view, that was to accompany the resurrection. Such a carnal view of God's kingdom was wrong, of course, but there's even a greater wrong, the assumption of the guest that himself and all the other Jews there would enjoy the Messianic banquet to the exclusion of all others, especially the Gentiles. So you're going out there and inviting. Who's he inviting? Well, really is, who did Jesus invite first? He invited the Jews, right? And in their mind, it was exclusively going to be the Jews. They had not seen anybody else involved there. This guy goes on and says here that Jesus moved to correct such false views and to warn that the hearers were in danger of missing the kingdom of God altogether themselves. So, here's the excuses. First one says, I purchased some property. Please send my regrets. That's the way the New Revised Standard puts it. In other words, I've got things in this world that I've got to take care of before I worry about going to this feast here. Next one says, I purchased 5 yoke of oxen. I need to go and try them out. And some of the commentators point out, well, would you have purchased 5 yoke of oxen without trying them out first to know what you're getting? So he had priorities in his business realm he had to go take care of there. And the next one says, I married a wife. So what's he putting in front of attending the feast? Well, his family obligations, family relationships here. It's in front of his there. Family matters. Then in verse 24, we get to the point where I think, I made the statement earlier, I think it's God's invitation and Jesus has done it. Because Jesus then looks in verse 24, says, for I, so he's taking it out of the parable mode now. And he says, for I say to you that none of these men who were invited shall taste what? My supper. Okay, my supper. So it's he and God that's doing the feast. And I say, none of these people that are offering these excuses are going to taste my supper. Now here's the big point. The Lord's going to fill this house. The Lord's going to fill this house. Because what they do in the parable here, send out to call the ones they want to come and they all refused. And he says, go out and call the next group down. And they'll come back and said, we still got room left. So he says, go out and get the poor, the blind, the wretched, and whatever, and invite them. I'm going to invite enough. I'm going to invite everybody to come to fill my house. What's the last part of the statement on the board say up here? Only if you're willing to come. I'm going to fill my house with those who want to be at my feast. If you don't want to come, give me all your excuses. I'll take care of them. If you're going to put necessity of this life ahead of me, I don't need you. That's what gets in the next part of what he's going to talk about in the last half of the chapter, the cost of discipleship. We're leading right into that with this. If you've got too many business matters and set to take care of and not come to my feast, I don't need you at my feast. If you're going to put family responsibilities ahead of me, I don't need you at my feast. I want those who want to come to my feast there. Okay, that's the first half. Somebody else talk. Thoughts? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, take these things we just talked about here, the excuses as he gives and not coming to the feast, and let's move into then to the second half here. So here's a little drawing of the king and inviting the poor, the wretched, the weak, sick, all of his feast. So next he moves into this thing where he says, if you come to me, you have to hate family. And so we have to look at this word and put it in perspective. Different commentator I haven't read from tonight, I don't think yet. So while we must be careful not to diminish from the impact of Jesus' strong affirmation, not taken away from it, we should recognize that the word hate is not used by Jesus here in the sense of despising or wishing or doing harm toward or abhorring with malice. We're never told to loathe or detest any other human being. Nevertheless, we should not just casually read the statement. The significance of the term is found in its comparative contrast with a total love and loyalty. It suggests loving less and therefore holding to be of less value when compared to another. We've all heard this explained before, I'm sure. One would not expect that Jesus would require his followers to hate father and mother and the other list, father, mother, wives, brothers, sisters. Why? Well, because you honor your father and your mother, you love your wife, Ephesians 5, etc. And so he will not tell you that. This is an interesting comparison. The Bible says that God saw Leah was hated and thus opened her womb to bear the first son for her husband Jacob. We get back to Jacob with Rachel and Leah, and then the two handmaids. We might say Jacob was in love with Rachel. He did not despise Leah because she bore him 6 more sons, or 6 altogether. But his strong romantic affection was toward Rachel. Love and hate, or the King James uses love and unloved to compare the two here. Okay. They're also used in the law to describe God's will concerning inheritance when a man had children by 2 wives. The children of the loved wife are not to be shown any preference over those of the hated or the unloved wife. So what we're trying to do is put things in perspective here. It's not hate, not literally hate. God wouldn't tell us to do that. but let's get the relationship right. Then he goes a step further, though. He says, not just your family, you got to hate yourself too. Again, it's a relationship type thing. This is where it starts getting really, really serious. Think about those who Nero burned as living torches to light up Rome. We've all heard about that. Are they willing to come to the feast? Were they going to give up to come to the feast? What do they hate? They don't hate themselves, but what they love more. That's the point. Okay? So, what do they choose for their life? They gave up their life. So, each of us must bear, Jesus gets to this point next, must bear his own cross that is willing to die. I really want to hone in on this slide here a little bit. We don't think about dying on the cross. That's not something that we see and associate with in our minds on a regular basis. But you're carrying your cross out to the place of crucifixion where you're going to be tied or nailed to that cross to die. So what did Jesus give up to bear his cross? Well, he gave up the glory of heaven to come and bear his cross. So, what do I give up to bear my cross? We kind of pass across this in a hurry sometimes too, I'm afraid. Then he says, bear your cross and come after me. And that come after me is the verb there is a continuous action type verb. You continually come after me. You continue to follow me. All right. Now let's kind of tie it down. Because he said, without this, verse 27, you cannot be my disciple. Long familiarity has softened the meaning of this for modern disciples, this guy says. The usual notion of it being that the reference here is to a patient, submissive acceptance of the ills and misfortunes of life. That's what we might look at it. I got to bear my cross. I got to bear whatever comes kind of in my life. I got to just bear my cross type thing. Jesus plainly meant it to be his disciple would be one who had to hate his own life to the extent of willingness to accept crucifixion at the hands of the Romans for the sake of fidelity to Christ. The background against which Jesus spoke these words proved this to be true. Only 24 years earlier, about 86, the Romans crucified hundreds of followers of a rebel named Judas the Gaullite. Crucifixion was a common spectacle before and after that date. Therefore, Jesus' mention of bearing a cross could not have failed in the eyes of these people he's talking to. They knew exactly what he's talking about. We're bearing your own cross. They had seen people do it on a regular basis. Are you willing to bear your cross for me? They understood what he meant by these horrible things. Now, hold your finger at Luke 14. I want you to turn to Romans 8 for a minute. We may not get past this point here, but if they don't, that's okay. Steve is teaching Romans in the auditorium class. We've been listening to it on the recording. He just finished up Sunday or maybe last Wednesday night, maybe Romans chapter 8. I want us to look at verses 16 through 18. I probably can't do it justice. Steve said he saw something in here more vivid to him as he went through Romans this time than he ever seen it before from these verses here. Let's read them. It ties in what we're talking about. Romans 8:16. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we're children of God. Keep that point. Children of God. Key point. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. If children of God, joint heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which will be revealed in us. Children of God, what? If we suffer with him. How did he suffer? On the cross. Are you willing to suffer with him? Am I willing to suffer with him on the cross? Am I willing to go to that extent to suffer with him? The sufferings of this present time. How much have you read about the sufferings that Christians at that time were going through? You're children of God, heirs and joint heirs with Christ, if you're willing to suffer with him. That's point one. Now let's look at point two. This is the big time, is what Steve talked about. I want you to look what follows. I kind of hurried across it on purpose. Children of God, joint heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. Who? If we suffer with him, who's glorified? We are glorified together with him. With them, when we study John 14, 15, 16, 17 there, Jesus talks about, I finished my work, glorify me with the glory I had before I came to this earth. And the glory he had in the ascension when he went back and sat down at the right hand of God. What's this verse saying? If you're willing to suffer with me, you're going to be what? Glorified with me. You, me, all the children of God will be glorified with me if we're willing to suffer with him. Look at the next verse. For I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. That's big. That's deep. That's powerful. In fact, I was up here Monday and Tuesday both, I think, doing something, fixing wires for one day. I told Steve, when he talked about this on the video I saw, I wish he would do a sermon on this point, our glorification. We don't think about that, I don't think. Us being glorified together with him. Glory which shall be revealed in us, as Paul's writing. That trigger a thought from anybody? Somebody? All the talking, Michelle.
Well, and also, if I remember correctly, I don't know exactly where, but it says about how this life prepares us for heaven, essentially, yes. And what we do and what we go through will prepare us for the day when Jesus returns.
I think a big point that Luke is making in this thing, it's all made here, it's not just this little mundane thing of, well, I'll have some ups and downs in my life. No. Christ says, I want you to suffer like I suffered, if that's what it takes to follow me. I left heaven and came down to bear my cross for you. What are you willing to do to bear your cross for me?
Just a quick note, I hope that it begins to sicken us how watered down our society has made religion in light of this. To where we don't even have to give up our sins anymore to be right before God, right? We've watered down religion to the point we don't even have to give up our sins to be right with him, much less be willing to suffer.
All right, Sunday morning I'll pick back up and kind of touch on this a little bit and finish out this chapter. The next chapter we got is Luke 15, which is, Steve just preached a sermon on the first two parables in there, the coin and the lost sheep. So we got the lost son. Everybody knows the parable of the prodigal son, right? So we can kind of hurry through those. We'll spend a little more time on this up here.